right, so let's start off with number 10. Here we have personality disorders. So when a person has changing personality disorders all the times, and if these episodes are very, very sudden, this could be a sign. However, there are several medical disorders that affect a person's mental state, but this definitely is a sign that somebody would be possessed by a jinn. Now, number 9, not just their mental state changing, but also their facial structure actually physically changing. When a person is possessed by a jinn, you can really see that their facial features will change. They'll start twisting and contorting in different ways, so much that the person is not necessarily recognizable and may look like a completely different person at times. Now, moving on to number 8, their voice changing. So people's voices changing, maybe a man could start sounding more like a female or a child, or a woman could start sounding like a man, or sometimes people even growl like beasts, but you'll hear a change in their voice, like a drastic change, and that is a sign of jinn possession. Now, moving on to number 7, there's sudden displays of various different emotions. Now, a possessed person will suddenly start to laugh or cry or just get really angry and upset. And this can happen at some of the most inappropriate times, like laughing at a funeral or getting angry at somebody that just smiled at them. Really, the display of emotion will just happen at times where you can't justify that sort of behavior. So if you see that happening, or if you experience that yourself, could be jinn possession. Moving on to number 6, here we look at sensations in the body. Now, let me break it down for you a little bit. The person that's possessed would complain about sensations that are felt all over the body, like ants crawling up and down the insides of their body or outsides of their body, the temperature of their body increasing, they feel like they're burning up, sometimes they feel really cold, feeling like there's something in their stomach moving around. Also, sometimes you might find that they're able to just speak completely different languages without learning those languages. Now, number 5, halfway in, we look at nightmares. Okay, so a person who is supposedly possessed by a jinn, they're going to experience a lot of horrifying nightmares. And oftentimes these nightmares are completely repetitive. They can also hallucinate and sleepwalk, and those are just some symptoms of jinn possession. Now, next up, we have sleep paralysis at number 4. These people will experience sleep paralysis and feel like actually something is holding them down. They may feel like their throat is being gripped or their mouth is being bound, or sometimes they may feel a physical heavy weight on their chest, and they try to move while they sleep, but they just can't. Or at times, sleep paralysis can stop them from screaming for help. But yeah, it's definitely a telltale sign that they are possessed by a jinn. Now, number 3 brings us to a person becoming unhygienic and isolated. The person who always maintained a standard of hygiene and is always clean and well groomed, and then all of a sudden they just switch up. Yeah, that could be a sign of jinn possession. Also, you'll find people who are possessed by jinns, they like to stay in places of filth and be completely isolated, and he or she may start to like dirty surroundings. Yeah. All right, moving on to number 2, a big increase in physical strength. Now, this is a big one here. The person who is possessed may have superhuman strength when they are under jinn possession. They can lift up things, very heavy things like cars, and the objects that they lift up are generally a lot heavier than one person alone can actually lift up. And it's said that in some cases, when people are lifting up these heavy objects, they often don't even remember that they did that once the spell of possession breaks. And finally, at number 1, we have depression and hopelessness. Now, the jinn, the evil ones, their aim, according to Islam, is to attack a Muslim's belief system and fill them with hopelessness and depression and start letting them do haram, forbidden things that go against their religion. And this can come as a great wave and happen repeatedly over a period of time. Now, a Muslim is advised to fully put their faith in God, but when a person's at their lowest point, that's when the jinn really push depression and hopelessness and extreme sadness, which we know definitely can lead to other unfortunate outcomes.
All right, starting off at number 10, we have unexplained temperature drops. One of the easiest ways to tell whether demons or jinn are present in your home is by paying attention to the temperature. If you experience unpredictable shifts in temperature, this could mean that you are indeed in the presence of an otherworldly entity. The reason for this is pretty straightforward. Supernatural entities require energy, and when they are present, they pull energy from the environment. Accordingly, their presence is directly associated with sudden drops of temperature. All right, the next thing to look out for are electrical glitches. Electrical glitches can include anything from ringing phones with no one on the other end of the line to flicking lights, televisions that turn off and on, and more. Problems with electricity is a classic clue that reveals a supernatural presence could be nearby. Supernatural entities exist within another dimension and need conduits to make contact, which is why audio and video recording devices have become so well known as methods of communicating with spirits. Now, this next one is interesting. You might want to keep an eye out for unexplained smells. One of the most common ways to identify the presence of a demon, spirit, or jinn is through the sudden appearance and disappearance of a specific scent. Supernatural smells will usually be somewhat familiar, like perfume, flowers, or the distinctive aroma of pipe tobacco, for example. Sometimes the scents can also be unpleasant, like that of sulfur, which has been connected to negative hauntings. These smells can manifest and then suddenly disappear without any explanation. Coming up at number 7, we have unusual feelings of depression and sadness. Now, it's quite unusual to have feelings of overwhelming sadness and depression in your home. It may not always be connected to your mental health. There may be an outside influence, especially when the feelings tend to disappear as soon as you leave your house. In many cases of negative and oppressive hauntings, homeowners are plagued by heavy feelings of sadness, anger, fear, and or depression, which cannot be easily explained. This may be a clear sign that something is sharing your home with you. Moving on to the next sign, which is the movement of objects. If you start seeing things like doors, cupboards, and drawers opening and closing by themselves, or maybe you notice that things seem to disappear from one part of the house only to show up in another spot without having been moved by anyone else who lives in your home, you may be in the presence of a supernatural entity. Keep in mind that a supernatural being needs to build up quite a lot of energy to interact with physical objects. So if this is happening, it's worth looking into further. Coming in at the halfway point at number 5, we have unidentifiable sounds. The unexplainable clomping sounds of boots on the staircase, footsteps going up and down hallways, knockings in the walls or on doors, and disembodied voices in the night are all signs that your house could be haunted. While strange sounds are often more closely connected to residual hauntings, it is also possible that you have a demon or jinn on your hands who wants to get your attention. Now, this next one is interesting. I've actually experienced it myself. Odd behavior from your pets. If your pet begins spending an inordinate amount of time in a certain area of your home, or having a sudden reaction to something that is unseen by you, then it is very possible that they are making contact or sensing the energies of a paranormal entity. Animals can pick up on sounds, smells, and sights that are not detectable to humans. In addition, dogs especially are known to foresee imminent earthquakes, tornadoes, and other natural phenomena. So it is not a surprise that your pet can also feel and react to the presence of ghosts, demons, or jinns. Up next, we have the feelings of a nearby presence. Many people who find themselves living in a haunted house will often speak of a feeling of a presence in the house that they just can't explain. This may manifest as a feeling of someone standing over your shoulder, close behind you, or even in the room with you, when you can clearly see that no one else is there. It is sometimes felt like there is an unexplained pressure on your body, such as your shoulders or legs. It is also possible to feel as though you are being watched wherever you go in the house. Experiences such as these could be a sign that a supernatural entity is trying to observe and make contact with you. All right, and our next one is the sensation of being touched. This one is creepy to me. Supernatural entities also try to get your attention through touch. Perhaps a tug on your hair, a touch on your shoulder, gentle tugging on your clothes, or in more negative situations, pushing someone down the staircase, scratches, bruises, burns, or worse. If this is something that you start to experience in your home, it is very possible that you have an unwanted presence there. And coming in at number 1, we have seeing shadows and movement. If you suddenly start seeing the sudden apparition of what looks like a person or some type of demonic figure standing in a corner or anywhere in your home really that vanishes inexplicably, it is highly likely that you have a supernatural situation on your hands. Most sightings will be much more subtle though. You may start to see flickers of movement out of the corner of your eye, but when you look straight at the spot, nothing is there. You might also see shadows that do not belong, moving in the opposite direction of the light, or seeming to float around in the darkness. If this becomes a common occurrence, you may have a supernatural ghost, demon, or jinn in the house with you.